afternoon. Welcome to our Spring 2023 edition of That's What Teens Say. My name is Jenette Jurczyk. I am the National Director of the She Said Project, the organization that created this program, That's What Teens Say, back in the fall of 2018. This is actually our 9th installment, running this program with the complete support of the Champaign Park District. Thank you very much. We also have a program for grown adults called That's What She Said. You might have heard of it, where we empower everyday women to share their extraordinary stories live on stage for one night only. But the women who appear in That's What She Said in Champaign-Urbana and other communities get 3 to 4 months to prepare for something like this. The young people you're about to witness met each other and met us at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. Not kidding. What they have been able to accomplish in just over 30 hours is pretty remarkable. So I really want to say thank you for being here to cheer them on. It means the world. I really want to thank some really important organizations that made this weekend and this performance possible. The Rock Counseling Group for being our presenting sponsor. Yes, thank you. Leaders for Life Martial Arts. We love you guys. Jersey Mike's and Moe's Southwest Grill for feeding our young people this weekend, and our mentors. And our amazing volunteer mentors. I said I'm Jenette Jurczyk, Emily Renee White, who is our teen program coordinator, Jael McLean, Heather Robertson, and Whitney Pope, who spent the weekend working with these teens. So everyone got a program, you can follow along. You're about to hear some really extraordinary stories. And again, they have only had 30 hours to prepare for this moment. So typically in theater, you wait till the end of the show to give your big applause and your standing ovation, but here's what I want to tell you about this weekend. This performance is just the icing on the cake. They have already put in the work. So when they come out here, I want you guys on your feet, cheering like you've never cheered before. So please welcome your 2023 That's What Teens Say speakers.
I'm standing at the back of the diving board, the front staring me dead in the eye. My heart is racing and my feet are frozen in place. I can't move, I can't breathe. There is nothing I can do to fix this. I'm broken. No, you're not. You're growing, you're learning. This is a part of the process. Don't give up, just learn. Diving is a mental sport. Sure, I need to be physically capable to do the dives, but I can't continue without being mindfully aware. I've been diving since I was 8 years old. I was terrified to jump from the board into the water. It's been 9 years and I continue to have these moments where I'm terrified. Diving is a sport where you're constantly learning. You can't be the best because there is always more to achieve. I got a double, okay, now I have to do a double pike. Okay, now I have to do a 2.5. It doesn't end. In basketball, you practice and practice and practice to perfect your free throw. In diving, you practice and practice and practice to perfect a dive, but once you do, you move on. It's almost as if there are levels and they are endless. I used to think I couldn't do it. I wasn't capable of doing it. I wasn't good enough. This sport isn't for me, but I could do it. I was capable. I was good enough. I continue to push myself mentally to understand how capable I truly am. The mental blocks aren't real. They're only there to hold me back, to keep me from succeeding. I need to be the one to take those mental blocks and remove them from my mind. No one else can do it for me. While diving may not be a part of my future, I know that the lessons I have learned while diving will travel with me for the rest of my life. These lessons are more important for me than anything else I have learned. I have learned to keep pushing myself even if something is really difficult, to allow myself to step out of my comfort zone and learn about who I truly am. No matter what comes out of my experience with diving, I will know that I have grown and learned more about myself through this journey. I am proud of who I've become. I'm standing at the back of the diving board, staring the board dead in the eye. My heart is still racing, but my feet are no longer frozen. They are moving, I'm moving. I have changed my life by acknowledging how I am in charge of my future, no one else, me.
Black Children Matter. On May 27, 2020, I was on TikTok as normal. I saw the video of George Floyd. It traumatized me. I still get flashbacks from seeing a 3-second video. I couldn't watch it any longer. After I heard, "I can't breathe, please get off me," I was so done. I didn't watch TikTok for the rest of the day. And that's big for me because I can't go a day without watching TikTok. Looting and rioting, people I saw on TV that was doing it, I had mixed feelings about it because I thought it was never going to happen by my house. Then it did. Somebody warned us that people were going to steal stuff from by nearby store and start shooting by my house. So I had to go to my grandparents' house for the night. It was the safest place for my brother and I. So one, we weren't in danger, but two, so we could sleep peacefully. I always knew what racism was and the civil rights movement was, but it never clicked until I saw it on TV. My mom sat me down and told me about Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, and Emmett Till, but I really didn't care because I was 8 and all I wanted to do was play outside. Have you ever felt outnumbered in a school like you were the only black person? Or when the boys in your school say words that no one gave them permission to say? There's times where all you can say is okay, because if you say something to a teacher, then it turns into, "You're being a snitch, you're so sensitive." People would say, "You just don't like other people liking your culture," and that's far from the truth. Well, I've started to tell my teachers at school, and they started to talk to the kids that made racist comments, drew something racist, or said something off of a stereotype. And it made a bigger difference in the way I like school. I started talking in public places, and I start with a K through 8 assembly and just 6th, 7th, and 8th assembly. I like school so much more. I didn't have people on my back telling me racist stuff, and that made a huge difference in the way I like school.
I think I first realized what I was back in 6th grade, back before I had a name for the feeling. It was around when I first entered the locker room to change for PE. I remember walking over to the locker I'd been assigned and hoping no one looked at me. I hadn't realized how much I hated looking at myself in the mirror or seeing me when I changed. But it hit me then, and I didn't know what to call it back then. But this is my first experience with my gender dysphoria. Most of middle school was spent in my head, building all the characters I've created, trying to make them reflect on how I was feeling, to try and make sense of myself and the jumbled chaos in my head. I made many trans and LGBT characters, most with dark and heavy trauma, because trying to find creative scars to give them and stories was easier to understand than my own mind. My mind, buried in fantasy, wasn't focused on the jumbled, incoherent thoughts that plagued it. I lost myself in music and different song artists, fell into creepypasta horror stories and the songs people made about them. It wasn't until the pandemic hit that I finally had time to rest, think, and go through all the things in my head. I spent a lot of time discussing my thought process with my friend from school to try and make what was going on make sense. If I didn't have her support, I don't know what I would have done. I also came out to my friends and eventually the whole cabin at camp. It took a while before I started going by Max at school. I went by my legal name all freshman year because it was online and didn't really matter. In sophomore year, I was able to build up the courage and go by my name at school full time. I still get misgendered a lot, but I don't really mind anymore because no one uses my old name.
I've always been an artist. Ever since I had the motor skills to pick up a pencil, I was drawing stick figure family portraits. I remember getting art kits every Christmas and immediately opening them up to test all of the art supplies, how good the colored pencils were, how many of the markers were already dried out. My parents also got me how to draw books, and I would watch tons of how to draw videos on YouTube. When I got my first sketchbook, I was drawing in it nonstop. I loved drawing characters, making up a face and outfit on the spot with no previous plan. Then I made a character whose design I really liked, and I couldn't stop drawing it. I discovered that I can make up my own stories for these characters. I can make my own world and let my imagination run wild. I would much rather be in my room right now with my sketchbook and pencils, because I've always thought it's easier to be by myself than talk to other people. I read a lot. I've thought about being a fantasy author as well. It's another way for me to create my own worlds. In my worlds, there's endless adventure. Anything could happen. In real life, not so much. I used to play a lot of Minecraft, yet another way of creating my own worlds. I haven't played in a while since my laptop is garbage and barely functions. But I'm here anyway, talking in front of people, talking about myself, and trust me, the only way I'm surviving this is because I'm imagining all of you as characters from a book.
About this time last year, I started to get very serious about sports, specifically basketball. I joined a travel basketball team, started to have one-on-one sessions with a coach, and did camps. I did at least 3 hours of basketball almost every day this summer, if not more. If I'm willing to put that much time into a sport, I obviously do love it. However, that doesn't mean it didn't come without its hard times. When I started to get serious about basketball, I was in somewhat of a honeymoon phase. It's all I wanted to do, and it's all I thought about. It was all-consuming. Soon enough, this started to wear off, though. I realized how competitive a sport it really was and how behind everybody else I felt. They had all been rigorously practicing for years, while I had just started. I started to find less fun in the sport and began to get into my own head more. I remember thinking, now I actually have to be good at this. I've always been a perfectionist, but this started to exacerbate that. I had to make every shot. I had to have a perfect pass. I had to defend the other team so well that they couldn't do anything. I'd want to perfect things so badly that I would shoot the same shot over and over again for up to 2 hours straight, never moving from that one spot. I started to become infuriated if I did one thing wrong. I would beat myself up over every minuscule mishap, and then that would be followed by my coaches yelling at me and my teammates telling me what I did wrong. I started to get extremely self-critical, not only on the basketball court, but also in my everyday life. I started to play worse and overthink everything. This prompted me to feel guilty for playing bad, as my parents were putting lots of money and time into this as well. I felt like even though I was putting in so many hours, I was only getting worse instead of better. This made me fall out of love with the sport, depleting any motivation I had once to get better. But then I met a coach I loved. He was not only a great coach fundamentally, but he also understood the mental aspect of the sport. He knew when to give me tough love and make me push through, versus when to lay off and understand that I was just having one of those days. He made me believe that I really was improving and all of this was worth it. However, he also made it clear that my self-worth was not tied to a sport and my performance in it. He reinvigorated my love for basketball. This happened near the end of my AAU season and summer. Going into high school, I joined the Rana swim and dive team, which gave me my first real break from basketball in months. I'd be so tired after diving that even if I wanted to play basketball, I couldn't. This absence showed me how much I actually loved the sport. This season, while I wasn't perfect, I dramatically improved. I made my goal of making varsity my freshman year, and I stopped beating myself up nearly as much. I've gradually started to develop a next play mentality. While there have been hard times, there's always going to be. It's unrealistic to set the expectation for myself or for anybody that there's never going to be hard days or mistakes. This experience has helped me realize how much mindset matters, not only in sports, but in every area of life. I learned that it's about the journey, not the end result. Not everything needs to be perfect, and it's okay to make mistakes and grow from them, even if that's not in a linear fashion. I'm now more motivated than ever to focus on improving my skills, but more importantly, having fun on the court.
My strength is getting through things that are tough for me. My strength is perseverance. I still struggle with it, but I do consider it to be my strength. Whether it's retaking tests when I get a bad grade, practicing my viola meticulously before I perfect every note, or braving the death of a loved one, it will always be my strength. When things feel like they can't get any lower, I persevere. When I feel like I can't improve, I persevere. When I feel like I'm nowhere near good enough, I persevere. My perseverance is key when I get new sheet music for my orchestra class. We need to have perseverance right next to us as somewhat of a support item. Perseverance was tough to have during the pandemic, as we didn't have any in-person classes for me to play with my class as an actual ensemble. It was hard to find the motivation to keep playing, as I didn't think I had any sort of skill. I thought I should have just given up. I felt useless, like a crumbled up piece of paper lying on the ground. I didn't even know the notes on one entire string. Everyone else in my class seemed so focused on the Zoom calls while I just clumsily followed along. I slowly stopped playing more and more, making me fall steadily back into a beginner mindset. Once 7th grade started and we were back in person for classes, everyone had improved more than me. I felt left out. I still knew the basics for sure, but the 8th rests, D sharps, and double stops sounded like gibberish to me. I didn't participate that much in class due to my fear of failure and embarrassment, but I finally found the courage to learn things I didn't know and tried harder. Sure, I didn't perfect them as soon as I started, but I kept on trying. Now in 8th grade, my teacher says I'm one of the best players in my class. I play with confidence now. Thankfully, I persevered.
It started when I was visiting Spain last summer. For over a month, I had been crying myself to sleep, losing motivation, and binge-watching TikToks in my unmade bed. Then something happened. I began to pay attention to how girls' bodies on TikTok were shaped. I began to compare the shape of their bodies to the shape of my body. I realized how my stomach would expand after a meal. I began to think that if I ate healthier, or I didn't eat as much, I would slim down a bit. In the fall, I began running cross-country. Even though I didn't like the sport, I agreed to do it because I knew that exercise burns calories. At the same time, I was doing a musical. Sometimes I would come to rehearsals for the musical and compare how some girls' legs looked to how my legs looked. That's where I realized that I had thick calves and thighs, and I did not like it. That's when I began to eat even less to get skinnier legs. It wasn't working. As a result of me trying to eat less, I began having moments where I would binge eat. Every time I had a moment like that, I would tell myself, why couldn't you have just resisted? By now, I was skipping meals. I had to lie to my parents to convince them I did eat. I would lead my parents out of the room, throw my food in the trash, and tell them I ate the food once they came back in the room. At the cast party for the musical I did, even though I hadn't eaten anything for over 4 hours, the only thing I ate was about half of a cookie. After the musical ended was when things started to take a turn for the worst. My parents began worrying about my eating habits. My friends did too eventually, because one day at lunch, I forgot my food in my locker and decided the situation was a perfect opportunity to skip lunch. When my friend saw me with no food in front of me, she started getting concerned. You have to eat something, she said. Fast forward to Thanksgiving, I didn't eat anything that morning or afternoon. My dad actually had to tell me about this female singer who died from anorexia. However, I didn't care the slightest bit. I would have rather died skinny than been fat back then. When I went to my friend's house for dinner that night, I made a strict eating rule for myself. I'm only going to eat traditional Thanksgiving foods tonight, I told myself. I succeeded with dinner, but after eating that pie for dessert, I began binge eating. That night, I slapped myself so many times that my face was redder than a tomato. My eating disorder was getting worse every day. One day, I woke up and told myself, I'm not going to eat anything for the whole day. That was probably one of the worst mistakes I've ever made in my life. I felt lightheaded the whole day. My parents got furious with me when I refused to eat, and I just felt horrible mentally. That night, I was so hungry, I dreamt of eating, and that morning when I woke up, I ate all I wanted. That's when my perspective changed. As the weeks went by, I started to realize that I have to learn to accept the way my body looks because it's perfect just the way it is. I've gained a lot of weight in the past few months, but I don't care anymore. I now know I'm healthy and I like my body, no matter how it looks.
You're just a teen, but this hurt me. You're just a teen, but this wasn't okay. You're just a teen, but I need help. You're just a teen. I have been told this numerous times throughout these past 5 years, and no matter how many times I was upset, hearing that statement filled me up with anger, sadness, and guilt. I shouldn't have to feel guilty for simply saying something that upset me or trying to speak my mind. Yes, I am a teen, but just because of my age does not mean I don't know what I'm talking about, no matter who it was to. There was a big time in my life where I was never listened to except for my mom. In 5th grade, I started to notice my life start to change, and that was one thing that was hard to learn and accept. My parents started to go through a rough patch, and I remember that affecting me mentally, socially, as well as physically. The divorce gradually started to affect me more throughout the months, and just like that, when I got to middle school, I had lost all my friends, I became bullied constantly, and I started to feel hopeless. I would have rough nights at times, and if I tried to call for help when I knew I was in danger, no one would believe me and always take the adult side. I truly felt hopeless and never knew if anything would go right for me anymore. I wanted my true little happy self back. When I finally told my mom about what would happen, she understood me, and she felt for me, and she tried to protect me and stand up for me when I couldn't. But I soon started to notice that it became hard for her, and knowing that it was affecting my mom, it was hard to watch. I didn't know what to do, I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't know how to call for help. I started to think, no one will notice me, I'm drowning, and no one can notice me. Of course, a lot of people loved me, but I didn't want to have my mom stressing about me. Knowing what she was going through was hard enough. I wanted to show I could do good and at least help her in some way, and that I wasn't just some teen not understanding what was going on. But then, my grades took a turn and my performance in school took a downfall. By the middle of 6th grade, I have never felt so low and burnt out, and that didn't end until the end of 7th. The feeling of destruction scared me, and I didn't know how to handle the stress from my family problems to my friends, but most of all, me. I had no control over my actions, and I tried running away, I stopped caring, and I would argue with my mom a lot. In those moments, I was a teen. I was a teen hurting and begging for help. I just didn't know where to start. Looking back now, I feel terrible for treating the one person who truly cared about me, and I will always appreciate my mom for staying in my corner and helping me and taking care of me through my hard times. As the years would go on, so would I. Growing through that, I have learned to use that as a strength. I want to help others and be able to help them understand that it truly does get better, but not over one night. Knowing it happened during my teens and that I still am a teen helps me feel better and that I can connect with other young teens. So when I hear the saying, "You're just a teen," I truly will respond differently than I did before, and I will be proud of it.